Okay. All right.
We
Welcome to Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Giff.
And tonight, we are going to have a fourth person. We have a special guest on tonight. We're very excited to have him. He did make an appearance on an episode once before, but that was pre-recorded. Tonight, we've got the real thing live in studio. So Brian Colburn from Playlist Wars is here with us. And so I'm going to kick it over to him. And if you want to talk about where you're coming from and your podcast a little bit.
First off, gentlemen, thank you so much for having me on. I sincerely appreciate it. Looking forward to our discussion tonight. And yeah, I'm co-host of a show called Playlist Wars. And to kind of put it into the easiest perspective, in the elevator pitch, so to speak, one casual music fan, one music fanatic, one guest, one topic, 3 playlists. The listeners decide which one of us got it right. And Brad, I know you have been a guest on the show.
What I realized, so this episode we're recording tonight is going to come out on March 7th. And the one that I did with you is coming out the next night, I believe.
Oh, great.
Wow.
So it's going to be like a whole week of our podcast just dominating, I guess.
That's a whole lot of Brad.
Yeah, Brad's worried about oversaturating.
Probably
the
a little
market.
too much.
Yeah, a little bit.
Man, Joe Rogan's going to be in trouble now.
Right.
But yeah, it was a ball being on there. I got to do the Foo Fighters one with you. I can't wait for that to come out for people to hear it. I love your format. It's when I started listening, it really like just hit me like this is something that I've always wanted to talk about and didn't have a lot of people that would really get into it that much and want to talk about it. And so I loved listening. And then it was like really exciting when you guys said I could be on. And so I hope I can do it again someday.
Oh,
So
dude, of course. What's funny is I've spent my entire life trying to talk music with people, and they've been trying to shut me up about it. So that's why I went to the podcast, because sooner or later I was hoping I'd find somebody out there that enjoys talking music with me.
And if they don't, they can just shut it off, right?
Exactly.
And then you don't even get your feelings hurt that way.
Exactly.
Yeah, just stay off the Twitter comments, then you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Right.
All right, so the first thing we usually like to do if we have a guest, because we've had a couple on now, is ask them to share, because we always talk about our influences in pop culture. That's obviously what we do. And so, Brian, we wanted to see what you have been influenced by over the years. This can be music, movies, TV, games, whatever, and kind of where you're coming from any ages of your life that you'd like to get into.
All right. Well, obviously, my whole life is music from pretty much my earliest memories. So we'll talk about that plenty tonight. But instead of that, I'm going to talk about things kind of outside of music. And my first pop culture thing is the Muppets. The Muppet movie.
Good call.
Yeah. The Muppet movie soundtrack was the first album I ever owned. And I danced with my mother to Rainbow Connection at my wedding. Anybody that knows me knows I am a huge Muppets fan. I grew up watching The Muppet Show, Fraggle Rock, Muppet Babies, and specials like Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. And now that I have kids of my own, I get to relive all of that through their eyes and with them. So they were always a huge part of my childhood and adulthood. We even have an episode of Playlist Wars based on the Muppets. That was a family episode we did.
I was just going to make sure to bring that up so that you could get that in there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's such a special part of my all happy memories and kind of the start of what I found to be humor was what the Muppets humor was. And my style of humor really plays into what Jim Henson brought to that. Second,
I was just going to say, the thing about the Muppets is that they're funny at all ages, too. You can watch it as an adult, and you can pick up on things now that you maybe wouldn't have picked up on when you're like 5 years old or whatever, but it's still funny. It's like they got that, those jokes mixed in that appeal to every audience, it seems like.
Well, yeah, and for me, Animal was a big reason I got into playing drums. I like to think.
Nice.
I mean, I was a drummer in middle school, and I loved the Swedish Chef. I mean, that's funny still today, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And Waldorf and Stadler, they're the Peter
Are that the
Gallery.
names? Is that the names of the two old guys?
Yeah,
Yes.
in the balcony.
I never heard their names before.
I don't think I did either. That's
Oh,
good
I
bit
think
of
that's
trivia
right,
there.
isn't it, Brian?
Yep, Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah, he'd
That's
know.
correct.
I
mean-
I was always partial to Fozzie Bear myself. I thought he was really funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was always a Swedish Chef and Dr. Teeth, golden teeth and golden tones. Welcome to my presence. I mean, the guy was, again, music, Dr. Teeth, of course.
Yes.
Outside of the Muppets, I'd say when I was probably, in my toy phase of life, so 6 through whatever, 9, 10, my biggest obsession was Transformers. Over Voltron, over G.I. Joe, over Thundercats, over He-Man. It was Transformers.
I'm the odd man out on this one. I really didn't.
For me,
get
it
into
was
them.
Transformers and then He-Man, or the two. But Transformers outranked He-Man for me. Distant third was G.I. Joe. But
I got to agree with you,
totally
Pete.
with you.
Yeah, Transformers, He-Man, and then Legos. Those are the three big ones for me. Yeah, love Transformers.
And don't let anybody tell you otherwise, but Soundwave was the best Transformer. He was a cassette player, so I got to squeeze music in there.
Yep.
I mean, look, he kicked ass and played tunes. What more can you ask for?
Right.
And I will be the first to admit, I have no shame in saying this. I bawled my eyes out in the movie theater when Optimus Prime died in Transformers the movie. I'm still not over it. I'm still not over it.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah,
I had
you should spoiler alert.
Yeah, you gotta throw spoiler alert in there. Go ahead, Brad. Sorry.
I had a GoBot when I was a kid. They were like the knockoff Transformers. I had one GoBot. That's what I remember. That's it.
I remember Brad.
Pete, you had Optimus Prime, and I kind of played with him at your place, but that's all I really knew.
Brad, you had some Transformers. You had Starscream, as I remember it. The the fighter jet.
Starscream.
I have no memory of that. I don't even know who that is.
It's funny that I remember that and you don't. Because
I just remember I got
Transformers, and you also had a huge California Raisins and Smurfs collection too.
Yes, I did have those.
I remember
I have the California Raisins soundtrack CD actually. Meet the Raisins.
Yeah,
do you remember
tape.
Do you remember the Christmas special, the California Raisins Christmas special?
Yep.
Oh, that was fantastic.
That was a big deal. I love that one.
Yeah, yep. So call me a cab. Hey man, you're a cab.
And then after that, my adult pop culture, I would liken to Mel Brooks. Spaceballs was my introduction to his style of humor, and he caught me at the perfect age. I was a Star Wars fanatic, obviously, and he spoofed it. And it was sophomoric and juvenile enough to speak to my 11-year-old, but I still quote Spaceballs to this day as a 44-year-old person.
Yeah.
And after I grew up, I started going backwards and discovering movies like History of the World and Blazing Saddles and The Producers. And I truly understood how brilliant Mel Brooks was with comedy. He knew every single style of comedy that there was, and he was able to weave it in and out of every scenario. So he knew where the line was. And not only did he step past it, he sprinted past it, but yet he kept everybody laughing in unison with him.
Yeah.
And that is a tough line to toe. So to me, it was brilliant humor.
Sorry if I cut you off there, but
no, not at all.
Blazing Saddles was my dad's all-time favorite movie, and that's what he talked about all the time. And so I got to watch that one plenty, and you're absolutely right. It's like no way that movie gets released today. I think it would just be it would just be too much crying foul about all the racist jokes in there, but it does bring it back. It's not I don't know how to put it. It's like if you watch the movie, it's not mean-spirited. Thank you. Yes, you said it exactly what I was looking for there. It's not mean-spirited, but still there's just so much in it that it would not get released today. But it's a hilarious movie. And Brian Colburn, I think you said it exactly right. He knew where the line was, sprinted past it, and it was humor for everybody. And the thing was, he would make fun of everybody, and it's like when you're like every group, and when you do it that way, when you're well balanced, then at the time anyway, people accepted it.
Yeah,
Well, and Pete, you had a Spaceballs reference on our last podcast.
Did I?
When we were talking about all the stuff that Kim had from New Kids on the Block.
Merchandising.
Oh, yes.
Merchandising.
Spaceballs, I loved too. And it was actually, that was really my big introduction mostly to Star Wars. Like, I knew Star Wars, so like I got all the jokes, but I hadn't even really watched any of the movies yet at that time. And so to me, Spaceballs was Star Wars, and I love that movie so much.
Let's harken back now. Brad was the only person in the world who had of Harrison Ford movies that he had seen up to an adult. He had seen Witness, but he had never seen Indiana Jones or any of the Star Wars movies.
No, I saw Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in like '89, but that was the first one I really actually sat down and watched. You are correct, and it's a joke we've made before. Right. I'm just much more cultured than the rest of you.
Right, yeah. Those big blockbuster movies,
that.
You want to stay away from those when you have a pop culture podcast.
Well, I'll tell you, while you were seeing Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in the theater, I was in the theater next door watching Weird Al's UHF. So,
oh, I remember that movie. Where he catches the bullet with his teeth. That was sweet.
Is that the list, or did you have any more to add?
That is kind of sums up me in a nutshell.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Awesome.
Nice. All right, and I think we all can pretty much relate to most of those choices here too. So
a lot
good
of
start.
parallels there, yeah, 100%. No doubt.
All right, so what we're going to do tonight, I guess we haven't even said yet. Pete, we're starting a new year. It's 1991. What are we going to do?
1991. Oh, we're going to open the yearbook.
We got to open up the yearbook tonight because it's
put that on Twitter today. Somebody said, "What's the catchphrase on your podcast?" And I said, "Let's open the yearbook."
There you go.
Yeah.
So we haven't even mentioned it yet. We're talking 1991, and we brought this up before. Our very first episode we ever did was 1991, and a few people heard it because it was out for a while, but it's gone by the wayside. And we talked heavily about music on that episode. Specifically, we talked about REM, Out of Time, and Nirvana, Nevermind. And that's something that's out there and maybe be available again someday. But because this year was so important and because that episode is no longer part of our catalog, we thought, let's go back to 91 again, because it's one of the best years of our lives. And our first episode, there was so much to choose from. So we're just going to talk general music. And then, of course, once we got Brian to come in with us, it was perfect because nobody knows more about music that I know than you. So you're a great guest for this episode.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. I hope I don't disappoint now.
So we're going to break
it's a lot of pressure. Yeah, I know. I understand.
Just 3 general categories. We're going to talk about what we remember about music in that year. And then we're going to talk about some certain songs that we remember that would stick out. And then we're going to finish with our albums of the year, which if anybody knows 91 music, you know that's what it was. It was the year when the albums took over, some of the greatest albums that we all still listen to today. So,
well, and when we said we decided we were going to do 1991, of course, the 3 of us always go through and look at things, whether it be movies, TV, or music. And when you go through the list of albums that came out this year, I didn't want to pick one as a disservice to all the other great ones. So I am very happy that we're doing this episode as just a massive music episode because there were so many great albums and songs and everything that came out this year, as you will hear as we proceed.
And this was a year or two so I'll get into it more specifically here in a minute, but for me at least, and I think for probably most of us, this was a really big like transitional year for music too. Like we kind of grew up on things at this time, and I know my taste changed quite a bit from January to December of that year. So
yeah.
All right, so our first topic, we're just going to go around the horn here. And so we're going to share some of the specific memories that we have from 1991 and that are related to music specifically. So Brian, you're our guest. We'll let you lead it off.
All right. Well, 1991 is my year in music. It's the year where I became a true music connoisseur and consumer, meaning purchasing in stores with my own money, with my allowance, with basically any penny I could get my hands on went back into the music store. And it's where I started carving my own musical path, where it wasn't just so much what my parents were playing. I was starting to go out and buy albums that I wanted to listen to personally. And I own over 100 titles from 1991 alone on CD, and they were mostly purchased during that year. A few I have since gone back because I had originally owned them on cassette, but went back and repurchased the CD as the cassette went and died. 1991 was the year I got my first CD player. So to me, that's a game changer because as of today in 2022, I own over 4,000 CDs. So it was when the obsession actually started. And I've been all in on this format now for 31 plus years. So CD is a dead format, narrative be damned. And I will say, though, thank God for the Columbia Record Club, because that was the year I got my first CD player.
Yeah.
So 12 CDs for a penny. And then if you got your friends to sign up, you got like 5 free CDs. So a lot of those 100 CDs did come from me getting all my buddies to sign up. I became like, I'm surprised they didn't put me on payroll that year. It was really bad. And I know we're going to talk about albums later, but there's a meme out there that circulates saying that 1991 was the best year of music because within 44 days, Metallica's Black Album, August 12th, Pearl Jam's 10, August 27th, Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusions 1 and 2, September 17th, Red Hot Chili Peppers' Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and Nirvana's Nevermind, September 24th.
Same day.
And Soundgarden's Bad Motorfinger, October 8th. That meme just speaks to how iconic of a year this is. So that's why it stands out for me.
Yes. Well said.
Awesome. That is you very similar to a lot of the things that I was going to say. So maybe somebody else should go first. How about you, Pete?
So 1991 was the year that I was 15 years old, as you both know, Gifford and Brad. I was a pretty awkward teenager, and so this was sort of like I am an awkward adult. That is true. But especially an awkward teenager, where this is where I was just kind of trying to figure out who I was and what music I wanted to be into, and all of that kind of stuff. And so all of the albums that you just said, or most of them, that came out in 1991. By the way, I think 1991 was the greatest year of all time for many reasons, not just music, but such a great year for movies, TV, sports for us in Minnesota. And just for everything, it was just an awesome year. And so this was a year where I was really kind of open to anything. I listened to just pretty much any genre. We listened to we listened to some country music back then too. I have memories of some of us watching CMT, which was just music videos. It was what MTV used to be, but it was just because they played music videos over and over and over again when there's nothing on, you just had it on. So a lot of it we would just laugh at because of those country music videos were just so terrible. But then there would be every once in a while, because you were watching it, there'd be a few that just stood out and were actually pretty good. And so, so that was just kind of where I was at that time, music wise. So absolutely, I had basically everything that you listed. That's when I started getting into, Brad was actually one of my biggest influencers. He got into bands like REM, especially Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Metallica, are some that I really started to listen to that year. And so, yeah, just probably my favorite year of all time for a number of reasons. Gifford?
Well, yeah, as Brad kind of mentioned, how this was a big transitional year, and I'm a lot like Pete in that I listened to a lot of different things. In middle school, it was definitely the hair bands. with Poison and Bon Jovi. Def Leppard is still one of the greatest bands ever. I absolutely love them. And then, of course, you had Appetite for Destruction, which was unbelievable. And I was listening to some of the lighter rap stuff. You know, we had Young MC, Tone Loc, things of that nature.
Yes.
Mhm.
But once 91 hit and you're moving into high school and grunge started, that was such a huge transition from those glam hair bands. And I mean, I still remember it. I'll bring it up later when we get into the songs, but I remember where I was the first time I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit. And you just, that feeling in you, you know that there's a sea change in music. But also at this time, as we've said a million times on this show, I grew up on a farm, riding around with dad in the pickup truck. Country music was always on. So I think in middle school, you know, you're looking for something that your parents aren't listening to, so that's where the glam rock came in. But then in '91, you know, you had different people coming out, and you're listening to a different kind of country, a little more poppy country, and that's when I really started listening to country on my own and finding that genre of music more. But again, still eclectic, still listening to some R&B and some rap and things like that as well. So 91, it was all over the place as far as what I was listening to. And there's just so much, it was just so much fun to go back and look up the albums and listen to the songs in preparation for this podcast. It was just awesome. So those are some of mine. How about you, Brad?
All right. Well, so you got your CD player in 91, Brian. I got mine in 1990. So I was a little bit ahead, but you brought up Columbia House. I was in BMG. So BMG,
Yeah, I
same
was in
deal
BMG
basically.
too. Yep.
And so I had started doing that in 1990, but 91 is really then by that time I am fully immersed. I'm buying these things. I'm buying them for myself. I'm out of cassettes, you know, and everything else. I've got this awesome new thing to listen to. So that was huge. At the beginning of this year, I'm still listening to a lot of like pop and top 40, and I'll mention a few of those songs coming up and some of the CDs that I had once owned that I don't have anymore. But this is the year I really grew up and got into other stuff. And when I look back, I feel it's really surprising because so we had one radio station basically that played, you know, things that you could listen to. You had like an oldie station and country stations, but the KKCK in Marshall, Minnesota, they played all the mainstream stuff, but there were some really surprising songs that they played, and I'll mention them in the songs, but like a few bands and things that you would never look back and think you would have heard that on the radio there, but they did play it enough, and I know they played it more than once because a couple of the songs I actually recorded off the radio onto a tape. And I can still remember my 1991 tape, like a bunch of songs that I taped off the radio. And so while they were a top 40 station, like somehow some of that stuff filtered down every once in a while, even to us out in the sticks. And so I really appreciate that. The big thing that happened this year, though, is obviously all the albums you mentioned came out. But during the summer, my brother came home from college and he had the REM Out of Time album. And I had heard of REM. I mean, they had a couple really big songs by that time. So, of course, I knew who they were. But I didn't really think much of them. And I listened to that CD and I'm like, this is awesome. I love this so much. And it wasn't long. Now I got BMG. I go back. I start ordering all the back catalog. The next year, Automatic for the People came out, which is my favorite album of all. And so basically, I met my favorite band of all time that year. And because of what they are and how they influence people and everything, it was part of what opened me up to so many other new things as well. And so I'll never forget the day. I can still picture it. He was out cleaning his car in the garage, and that CD was sitting there on this chair, and I'm like, "What is that?" And I went and listened to it after a while, and that's how I got to know them. So
what's interesting to me, and Brad, I'm interested to get your take, is that the Out of Time album, it's a good album, and it's what got us all, or you especially, and then the rest of us kind of, and really the country, into REM. I don't know if I'd put that album even in their top 5 of all their albums. It's
Yeah,
good,
a lot of
but
people wouldn't. I would. To me, there's a lot of sentimentality to it, but I love it. I think
Right.
it's great. And I get, I don't know why. I guess I don't know why some people don't like it as much, but I think it's great. So
all right. I
it
was
would be
interested to get your
it
take
would
on
be
that.
in my top 5 at least for sure.
Okay then.
So but then so I want to just, well, I'll save this for the next part. So that's our memories. Anything we're going to add to that? Anything you heard you want to follow up on?
No, I think that
Silence.
was excellent.
Okay.
I would like to add, I think I got my first CD player in 91 as well.
There you go. I bet that's pretty
I
common.
did too. I think it was 91.
Mhm.
I remember I got it for Christmas. And because this was when like I said, I did like country. I got it with a Garth Brooks album. So I remember my parents made a mistake when they were giving me Christmas gifts, and they gave me the CD first, not knowing, forgetting that's what it was. And I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with this? I don't have a CD player. And then it's like, oh, I get it now. So
that was your first. I can't remember. Do you remember? Does everybody remember what their first CD that you bought was?
Yep.
Had
Yeah,
you already?
I'm not proud of it.
I don't remember
What was
the
it,
one I
Giff?
bought as a.
My first CD that I bought was "Color Me Bad,"
Oh yeah, well that's coming up. I had it
That's
too.
a good one.
and here's the sad part is I'm standing in, I don't know, probably Shopco in Marshall with Cooley High Harmony in one hand and "Color Me Bad" in the other, and I
Oh
picked
man.
"Color Me Bad." Yeah.
Brian,
Yeah.
did you say it already? I can't remember. What was your first CD?
The Best of the Doors 2 CD
Oh.
set with Jim Morrison on the cover.
I had that one
That's
as
a
well.
BMG one I got there. My first two were to show the top 40, but actually I went back and listened to this like a year ago. It's really good. Janet Jackson, Rhythm Nation. That was my first one. And I also got Journey's Greatest Hits because I was all into because that's what we heard a lot anyway, was all the classic rock on the radio. So those are my first two.
Awesome.
All right, well, let's go into then some of the songs of the year that, for whatever reason, they stand out to you. Maybe they're your favorites. Maybe they're guilty pleasures. Maybe they have a sentimental feeling behind them. What do you got there for that one, Brian?
All right, well, I got two little categories here. The first one are not necessarily songs I love, but songs I wanted to mention because 91 had a slew of 1 and 2 hit wonders that kind of never got heard from afterwards. So I just want to mention these songs because even though he's much more popular in Canada, Tom Cochrane had Life is a Highway long before Rascal Flatts did it for the Cars movies.
Yep.
EMF had Unbelievable. Gerardo had Rico Suave.
Oh my God! Yes.
He also had a follow-up of We Want the Funk, which didn't do as well, but it was still the Parliament sample.
I don't remember that one.
KLF's 3 a.m. Eternal was like one of the high energy, almost sounded like Prodigy back in 91. Then you had Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, Good Vibrations and Wild Side. And obviously the big one for the year that people still talk about to this day, Right Said Fred's I'm Too Sexy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, those,
Nice.
I owned a few of those on cassette single. I won't say which ones. I'll let you guys figure that out for yourself. But the songs that I felt best summed up 1991, we did an episode of Playlist Wars, the songs of 1991. Now, I will not confirm nor deny that these songs are on my playlist or not. I would rather people go listen and find out for themselves. But 5 songs that I think people should take away from 1991. I'm going to start off with one, and it's Once by Pearl Jam. Introduced me to a brand new sound of music. It was hard rock, but it wasn't hair metal. It wasn't glam. It was new and it was fresh, and I just couldn't get enough of it. Ozzy Osbourne's No More Tears.
Oh, nice.
The first bass line I ever learned. The first time I heard the song, and I got my bass in 91 as well, I'm like, that's the song I need to learn. One of my first lessons, I'm like, how do I play this song? And my bass teacher goes, Really? You're starting with a song in drop D right from the beginning? Come on, man. But that was the first song I ever learned how to play on bass. So I also I learned how to tune to drop D with that song too. Tom Petty, one of my favorite all-time artists, Learning to Fly. The bridge between what my parents listened to when I was a kid versus the artists that I listened to as becoming a teenager and adult, Tom Petty bridged that gap. And it was one that I still relate to with my parents to this day. Skid Row's Monkey Business. They were a hair band. Everyone knew them as I Remember You. And then they come out in 91 with this aggressive, balls to the wall, hard rock, damn near metal song and say, no. We are not I Remember You. This was them trying to break away from the hair band mold. And I thought that was fantastic. And then one other song I'll mention, and I'm going to just say two words, and you guys are going to know the song and the artist by these two words. Drums, please. DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
Okay.
Summertime.
Yep.
I was thinking of something else for some reason. But...
I was in a different direction too.
That is my second song on the list that I made.
Well, why don't you go next then?
Down. All right. So my my list of just songs, and again, I put these on here because we'll be talking about albums later. So these are songs off albums that I'm not bringing up later. The first one on my list, Mark Cohen, Walking in Memphis. I love that song. I get chills every time. It's goosebumpable to me.
That's one song that I somehow didn't remember being from this year until I looked it up again. Because I had the album. I'll get to that, but I totally spaced that out as like coming later than this. So that was a nice surprise to see.
Summertime was the second one on my list. That's my all-time Fresh Prince song. I know every word. I absolutely love that song. I also have Good Vibrations on my list from Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Lolita Holloway on that song is the song. I don't care what Marky Mark is doing. That song to me is all about her and the piano. It doesn't matter anything else that's going on in that song, but she's amazing. I've got OPP, Naughty by Nature, because everybody loves a little Naughty by Nature and everybody loves OPP. Yeah, you know me. You guys will probably be mad at me for having this on the list and not in my albums I'm going to talk about later, but I figured somebody would in this group. But I have Smells Like Teen Spirit on my songs list. Possibly my favorite Prince song of all time, Get Off.
Oh, that's a good one.
53 positions and a one-night stand.
That is correct. Too Legit to Quit by MC Hammer. And the reason that I bought my first CD that I did, All for Love by Color Me Bad.
That's a catchy song.
It is. And when the guy goes, yeah, like that, I just like that part. So it made me buy that CD. So those are the songs that I just wrote down as songs that I love from that year.
All right. I'm going to go next this time. We'll switch it up a little since we already did. Because some of those ones that you guys said I've got on my list. So I have them grouped into three categories. The first one, and Pete, you were there. We went on a...
Pete, you were there, like in Tommy Boy.
Right, Tommy Boy.
You were there when I lost my virginity.
So we went on a trip for church that summer because we were big church guys, and we went to Dallas for a Lutheran youth convention. And all I remember from that trip is the music that we listened to over and over again on the bus, and then just was playing all the time. And so the number one song I had down, Brian already mentioned, it was "Unbelievable" by EMF. I love that song; it's so great. Mm-hmm. But that was part of that trip. You said Right Said Fred. The one-hit wonder that I remember from that trip is "I Touch Myself" by the Divinals.
Mm-hmm.
And then great church trip song,
right?
But for the record, we weren't actually like huge church guys. We were just like teen.
You were there for the chicks.
For the fun. That's right. You brought up Too Legit to Quit, but You Can't Touch This was still huge at that time, and I remember hearing that. Like there was a little dance we were at that one time, and And then the one that was really good that I remember is this came out in 1990, but I was way into the Black Crowes "Shake Your Money Maker"
Oh yeah.
CD at that time, and we listened to that over and over. And so, kind of a good variety of stuff from that trip. But I just associate all those with that trip because I don't know. That's what I remember.
That's weird.
Do you remember those songs from that trip, Pete?
I don't remember those songs. I remember music playing. I don't harken back for those songs.
That's my weird mind.
I guess it is weird.
All right. Then the next ones I have listed are all songs that I had either on the same or a couple different mixtapes that I made by recording off the radio. And the other big song that I remember by a band that put out a lot more stuff, but they're really known for this is Jesus Jones, Right Here, Right Now.
Mhm.
That song is just, I still love that every time I hear it.
Yep.
And then on that, I heard it the other day on the radio, and as it fades out, my brain totally, because on my tape, the next song was Joyride by Roxette. And so as the song is finishing, I'm in my head going, hello, you fool. And it's just because I heard it so many times on that tape over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great song.
I went back and watched that video while I was doing my research, and I saw Roxette on the albums list. So I went back and watched that one.
They had some real bangers back then.
They did.
Lenny Kravitz, It Ain't Over Till It's Over. I love that song. And then one, I didn't really know, I was into the Eagles, but I didn't really know who Joe Walsh was, but he had this song called Ordinary Average Guy that I just loved. It was just fun. And then this is where my tape had your other stuff. I had Paula Abdul, Rush Rush on it. But then the one that, this is the song I was mentioning that they played on the Marshall radio, and I can't believe it. So Susie and the Banshees, Kiss Them For Me. I just love that song, but they're like a very indie, but you guys probably don't even remember ever hearing of them.
It's not ringing a bell.
You'd know the song, I'm sure, if you heard it. But it was played enough on radio that I knew it and I recorded it, and I love that song. And then I just had 4 others down that didn't fit into either of those categories. So I didn't know this song till a couple years later, but Temple of the Dog, Hunger Strike is a great one. And then my country entry is Trisha Yearwood, She's in Love with the Boy.
That's a good one.
You mentioned bridging the gap with your parents. They love country, and this was a song that I don't know, I love that song, and it was something that we all listened to together and we loved, and so I still love that song. Naughty by Nature, OPP you mentioned, and then my last one is I owned a CD that my sister got in college, I think at a retail store, because it was a Gerbeau CD, the Jeans, but it was songs that for some reason they put together this thing. And there was a song on there by a band that I hadn't heard of before called Drama Rama, and the song was Haven't Got a Clue, and I just love that song. And there was actually about 5 really good songs on that CD. It was really weird, but it was a Gerbeau CD, so very unique.
Free with every purchase?
Yeah, I think she probably did get it free. All right, that's my list. Pete?
The Pearl Jam song that really struck it with me, and I know it's cliche, but it was their biggest song, and it got played over and over and over and over and over again to the point where Pearl Jam, they don't even like the song anymore, and they don't play it at their concerts. Jeremy is what really got me into Pearl Jam. Obviously, the whole album, every song is great, but I could put every single one of their songs on it, but that was the one that hit me the hardest and got me into kind of the Seattle sound as much as Nirvana, which is next on my list. Everybody loves Smells Like Teen Spirit, but my personal favorite song on that album is In Bloom. And then I think somebody mentioned Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion came out, November Rain, Under the Bridge, Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now, the next one was one that came out in late 1990, and I think it was really popular in 91, CNC Music Factory, Gonna Make You Sweat.
Oh yeah, me and Gifford were the number 1 fans of that. But that was 1990, yeah.
I actually thought it was a little before that, but when I looked it up, that was the year it came out. It was late 90 and then 91. Losing My Religion for REM, which we've talked about. One I had that I know doesn't count for 91 necessarily because it came out much earlier, but it was huge in 91, Bohemian Rhapsody, because of the Wayne's World movie.
Wayne's
It
World.
was just huge, and it got me into Queen. I had obviously heard of Queen before, but it was that movie and that song that I kind of knew that song, but then once it blew up, I loved it, and I bought their greatest hits CD. I listened to that nonstop, and it was actually a 2-disc CD. I loved every single song. And then I did have one country one on here, and it was on the Garth Brooks CD that I got that Christmas night. Rodeo is probably my favorite Garth Brooks song.
That's
that
mine
came out in
too.
91. The Rodeo and The Thunder Rolls, but I think that The Thunder Rolls is on the other album, the first album. Or
That's
not
on
the
No
first album,
Fences. Yeah.
No Fences, yes. And Rope in the Wind is the one with Rodeo. And that's the
Actually,
one
I take that back. Shameless is my favorite song, but Rodeo.
Shameless is also on that on the same album that Rodeo is on.
It is.
Is Shameless your
Rope in the
favorite because
Wind.
it's a Billy Joel cover?
No, that's not why.
Oh, okay.
But I
There
do
was
like
a lot
Billy
of
Joel.
lot of good country albums that came out in 91. You had Rope in the Wind, which you mentioned, which has Papa Loves Mama, which is one of my favorites. The River,
that's
obviously.
a fun one. Yep.
Brooks and Dunn, Brand New Man. Awesome.
You're hitting all my albums.
And then I won't say the other one then.
Say one more. Go ahead.
I did have one more country album that I have in my albums that you haven't listed off yet, but
Alan Jackson's "Don't Rock the Jukebox."
There it is. Those
are the three. Those are the three that I've got on my list.
So sorry.
No, that's fine. I will be
That's
talking
all right.
about them later. But yeah, those are the three big ones for me.
They're classics, all three.
Yeah.
They're absolute classics.
And Pete brought up watching CMT, and those are all the videos I remember watching, and a lot of the ones that I did actually like, and so.
Some of them you just had to laugh at because the quality of the videos was just hysterical. But then there was also some that you would pick up on that were well done, and the music was great. And so that's how I got into some of those songs.
Speaking of country, Dwight Yoakam must not have had a CD in 1991 then, because I would have had that listed, I'm sure.
Right. Dwight Yoakam, for some reason, is a very underrated. I think in the country music scene, he seems like he's really underrated.
Well, he's my number one,
and he's like,
right. I was gonna say he's not underrated in this group.
I know that, but it seems like in the country music scene, it feels to me like he's
because he's an outsider,
kind of an outcast.
He is.
Wow.
Yep.
Jinx.
Yeah. No, he had an album that If There Was a Way came out in 90, and then This Time came out in 93.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So, all right. So lots of good songs there. So Gifford, you and me both purposely left off songs that weren't on the albums we're going to mention. Pete, you kind of got into a few of those already, but so our last topic here is to get into the big albums, which we've already brought up a lot of them, but there's a few more that I haven't heard yet that I've got on my list, and Brian's got 100 of them, so
right.
There's obviously some more to go. So why don't you
let's go through them one by one now. No.
Right. Yes.
Well, I picked 5 to kind of give like a breadth of what I was listening to across the year. But before I get into those, I just want to also talk about the debut albums that came out in 1991. Artists' debut. This is stuff I just did in my research to prepare for tonight. All of these artists debuted in 91. Tupac, Boyz II Men, Brooks and Dunn, Mark Cohn, which you mentioned before, Cypress Hill, Hole, Live, Alanis Morissette. I'm not talking about Jagged Little Pill. She had a dance album in Canada in 91. Naughty by Nature.
Hold on. On that album, was Taylor Hawkins a drummer?
No, but when I saw the Jagged Little Pill tour in 95, he was the drummer.
Nice.
Yeah, that was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. Brad, I think we talked about that on the Foo Fighters episode, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so.
So I said Pearl Jam, Pennywise, Primus, major label debut. They did have an album before that. Seal, Smashing Pumpkins, Spin Doctors, Typo Negative, and Trisha Yearwood all had their debut in 1991. Lots of amazing artists there. But my 5 albums, the first one is an obvious pick. It's on every 1991 list. There's every story about MTV. I don't even have to go into it because I'll say it. Everyone's going to get it. Nirvana's Nevermind. Endless repeat for me. I played the CD all the time. It was loud and obnoxious. It was borderline punk rock with these soaring melodies. I knew it was aimed at me because my parents didn't necessarily hate it, but they didn't like it. So I knew it was my generation's music.
They're confused by it. What is this thing?
I remember watching Saturday Night Live with my mom because a lot of times because it was on late at night, and so we would tape it when I was that age. I would tape it and watch it on Sunday, and so I had it on. My mom's watching with me, and Nirvana. It was the one where he dyed his hair with Kool-Aid. And that Saturday Night Live performance, I'm like, I love this. And she's going, what the hell is this? and it's like, why did he do that with his hair and all that kind of stuff? So it's just one of those memories that one of my first memories of Nirvana.
Yeah, it was definitely a tap out moment for a lot of parents. And I totally get why.
Yep.
And another plug for you, you did a playlist and album episode on that. And I just wanted to point out that your 4 choices were identical to mine. And your favorite song is Breed, right?
Yeah.
Me too. Breed and Stay Away. I can listen to those just over and over and over again.
Those two are better than Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I think that's where people missed because everyone's like, oh, they're the Smells Like Teen Spirit. But no, that song, yes, it got the MTV airplay, but that's not why I love the album. I acknowledge that the song is iconic.
It's great.
Breed and Stay Away was what made me fall in love with them as a band.
Yeah.
And that's thanks to the album. My second album is one of the most infectious pop rock albums of the 90s, and it was littered with hits. Spin Doctor's Pocket Full of Kryptonite.
Yes. I got that.
Absolute masterpiece. Jimmy Olsen Blues, Two Princes, Little Miss Can't Be Wrong.
That's my wife's theme song, by the way. Little Miss Can't Be Wrong is my wife's theme song.
There you go.
Sorry, I cut you off on the.
No problem. I mean, that song. Everybody owned it, and there was a reason. It was just that good. Parents owned it. Kids owned it.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question because you said it had all these hits, and I agree. But I was listening to a different podcast, and they were doing like '90s one-hit wonders, and they had Spin Doctors on there, and I'm like, what are they talking about?
That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong.
Right. I didn't know what they were doing.
Two Princes was their highest.
That was the one,
hit, Little Miss Can't Be Wrong charted.
That's my favorite.
Yep.
That's my favorite too. Jimmy Olsen's Blues was a single. How Can You Want Him When You Know You Couldn't Have Me was a video at least. Wasn't More Than She Knows a video as well?
I don't.
Or definitely a single. It's a great song. I mean, just this album's fantastic.
Yeah. And I was really blown away. Like, what are you talking about? They're not a one-hit wonder at all.
Not even close. That's like saying Twisted Sister's a one-hit wonder. Yeah. Anyway, my third album, I mentioned it before in my songs, but I felt because he's my favorite artist of all time, he deserves a slot in each category. Tom Petty's Into the Great Wide Open.
Yeah.
Besides Wildflowers, I would say it's his second best album ever. He was working with Jeff Lynne on this album, and he did a lot of great stuff with Full Moon Fever because he had, Free Fall and I Won't Back Down, Running Down a Dream. But I feel he perfected it on Into the Great Wide Open. The title track is this beautiful storytelling Americana song. You have King's Highway, which is just a glorious pop song that was never released as a single, but in the movie Cars, they covered it in the movie because it just fit. Just some amazing songwriting all the way throughout. And then my last two, another one that I don't think you can mention 91 without acknowledging, Metallica, the Black Album. It's so pivotal in the band's legacy. Some people will say that for worse because they weren't thrash anymore. Yet some will say for better because they became a household name because of Enter Sandman and Nothing Else Matters and Sad But True and The Unforgiven and Wherever I May Roam. These were all MTV mainstays, and this made Metallica the biggest band in the world ever since. So, and then my last album is a little bit of a different pick, but it's one that is relevant now in 2022 because these guys are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a 2022 nominee for this year. And I'm going with A Tribe Called Quest's The Low End Theory. I mean, in 91, you had a ton of great hip hop. You had Black Sheep's The Choice Is Yours, Cypress Hill's How I Could Just Kill a Man. I heard OPP mentioned before, but Scenario introduced me to this new style of hip hop. And it was the posse cut track where a bunch of different people had a verse in the song. And it broke Busta Rhymes out. He was part of the Leaders of the New School at the time, and he had a verse in Scenario, and it's what made him become a solo artist. Just this incredible song. And the fact is, listening to A Tribe Called Quest, it opened my ears to other genres of music because they were so genius in blending jazz and hip hop beats together. It was pioneers of two sounds that necessarily weren't meant to come together. The samples were incredible. So that's my list of 5 albums that kind of cover a wide spectrum of what I was listening to in 91.
Well, our original co-host, Dave, would love that right there because Tribe Called Quest is one of his all-time favorites. And I think De La Soul had an album that year too, and those are like his 2 favorites. So I hope he's listening to this one because he'll like that.
Yep.
He, by the way, is also one that feels that Metallica has gone too commercialized since kind of to your point, and we joke about that too. But moving on.
I mean, 91 in hip hop, you guys could do a whole Pop Culture Yearbook 91 in hip hop episode. You really could, because Third Base, Derelicts of Dialect. I mentioned Black Sheep. You had the Ghetto Boys, We Can't Be Stopped, Hammer's Too Legit to Quit, Ice Cube's Death Certificate, Ice-T's OG Original Gangster, Naughty by Nature. You had NWA's Evil for Zaggin', Public Enemy's Apocalypse 91. I mean, all these were seminal hip hop albums, and just such a fantastic year in hip hop. I mean, really.
And that is the kind of stuff that we did not really hear where we grew up. So a lot of that we heard and learned about much later.
Right. That was more college days for me.
So
correct.
Yeah.
It's kind of I mean, we know a lot of it, but you're not going to hear that where we grew up on the radio. So unfortunately, it's a more
I grew up with New York City radio stations. So, I mean, it was, that was the new big thing. And hip hop was, Top 40 was a conglomerate of hip hop and God, it was like Pearl Jam followed by Skid Row, followed by Naughty by Nature, because that was kind of the top songs at the time.
I want you to think about New York City and then think of the exact opposite. And that's where we grew up.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you guys had the Garth Brooks, which certainly was not being played on Top 40 in New York.
Right.
Yeah.
But
NYC and RTR are 2 totally different things.
Right.
There you go.
All right. That was a great list. And you didn't really get into a lot of stuff that I've never heard of. I thought you might have some really, I'd love to see that list of 100 sometime, though.
Well, I'll just name a few off of it, not to go too crazy, but like Typo Negative, The Origin. What was The Origin of the Feces was their live album. Their first album was called Slow, Deep, and Hard. They were goth metal, and they were on Roadrunner Records. Anthrax had Attack of the Killer Bees, which had Bring the Noise, which was a massive hit. Motorhead 1916. Excuse me. You had a ton of hair band stuff that was still popular in 91. Even though Nirvana broke, it didn't put the nail in the coffin yet. You had Great White, Enough's Enough, Bullet Boys, Tesla, Ugly Kid Joe, White Lion, all had albums out in 91. David Lee Roth. You had Rush, Roll the Bones, awesome prog rock. These are all the CDs that I own from that year. Blues Travelers, Travelers and Thieves, Infectious Grooves, like I mentioned live before. I mean, God, I could just... And then you had the classic rock bands that were still popular. Bryan Adams, Dire Straits had their last album in 91. Genesis had We Can't Dance. And Queen had Innuendo, their final album.
I did want to mention, I meant to say it in the songs and I forgot. So you brought up Bryan Adams. And I like Bryan Adams a lot. Like a lot of his songs. Like he's pretty great. But... 1991, Everything I Do It For You. I hate that song with a passion.
I had to bring it up.
I could not.
Robin Hood soundtrack.
Oh
But if it
man.
wasn't for Robin Hood, you wouldn't have Men in Tights, which brings us back to the whole
Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks thing. So
That's right.
yeah.
Now, Canada's apologized on numerous occasions for Bryan Adams.
And I actually love Bryan Adams,
Yeah.
but I hate I'm not a
That
fan of that
song
song.
is-
He's
Yeah,
got so
that's-
many good songs, but yeah, can't handle it.
Just so bad.
Okay, well, in the first round, Pete went second, then you did, Gifford. So I'm going to go second this time. We'll just
right.
keep switching it up. So a lot of these have already been said, so some of these I'll go through pretty quickly. But I have 14 albums listed, and every one of these I either owned then. A lot of them I bought through BMG. Some of them I no longer own because I went through this phase where I was always selling and trading in.
You gave me a ton of stuff.
Oh, did I give it to you?
Oh yeah.
And then some of these are like, the big ones. So Mark Cohn, we already brought that up. I put these in order of date. So that came out on February 12th. And I did not remember that being that long ago. I thought that was more like 93, like when we were seniors in high school. So that was a big one. I own that one. And then March 12th is when Out of Time came out. And I've already brought that up, but that was the big one to me. And it was great that not only me, but it's like the Black Album. I mean, that's the one that really broke REM, in to everybody. So here's a couple that haven't been said, and I'll be curious on some of these that I mentioned, if you had any of these, Brian, since you had 100 of them. So the Bodines, Black and White, that was one that my siblings both listened to. They're from Wisconsin, but they were pretty big. Well, actually, they sang the theme song to Party of Five?
That sounds right.
Or, yeah, I can't think of the name of the song now, but that song hit big later on. But this album didn't have that on it, but it was a great album. And then the next one was another like more college rock, School of Fish, and I listened to that. Oh,
that
yeah,
one's great.
That's awesome. And the big song there was Three Strange Days, which I know, Gifford, you knew that one because we used to talk about that one. That's another one of those songs though they played on Marshall Radio, and I can't believe it because
hit wonder there too.
Yeah.
For your Bo
But I
Dean
love that
song,
album
it was
beginning to end.
Closer to Free is
Closer.
the one you're thinking of.
That was
Bo
on their
Dean's.
next album. Then you mentioned Boyz II Men. I loved Cooley High Harmony. That came out on April 30th. And I still think, I love Motown Philly, but It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday is one of those songs that I could just listen to. It's one of those goosebumps songs. I love it. And they had a lot of like ballads after that. But to me, none of them I don't like any of them like I like that song.
Oh, you see, I would go against that because to me, End of the Road is one of the greatest slow jams of the 90s period. But that didn't
that's
come
the one
out
that everybody else loves
until the
too.
re-release in 93. So it wasn't on the original album. So I couldn't include that in my song list.
It's a good song. But I would listen to It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday. And then right in the smack in the middle of the year, July 2nd, Tom Petty, Into the Great Wide Open came out, and I love that album. That is, so you mentioned a lot of the songs, King's Highway, Into the Great Wide Open. I love Two Gunslingers. So many great songs. And
oh God, All or Nothing. I mean, I could, that whole album's a masterpiece, period.
So Pete and I both love Full Moon Fever as our favorite, but this one and then Wildflowers too. I mean, it's like a trifecta of just, they're all so great. And I love Tom Petty. All right, Gifford, I had Color Me Bad. I bought that. That was on July 23rd.
I had the New Jack City soundtrack. Does that count? Because Color Me Bad was on it.
Were they on that? I watched the movie a lot.
I Want to Sex You Up was on the color. That's what kind of broke them.
Really?
Yeah,
and then
that was
the
first
album
one.
came out after, I think.
I even, me and our friend Chad, we both went and bought overalls, and we tried to wear them one up and one down, and didn't last long that day in school, and I don't think I ever wore them again after that.
Did you do them
I'm
backwards,
pretty sure you
though,
wore them all the
inside
time.
out?
Not backwards, but we ended up just going both down because that was like the least, just to have people leave you alone. The Spin Doctors, you brought up a lot. That was mine. That came out on August 20th. 1 week later, Pearl Jam comes out, August 27th. And here's one that hasn't come up yet, and this is one of my favorite albums, Toad the Wet Sprocket, Fear, August 27th. That is an album that I could listen to beginning to end, all like every day, every week. It's so good, and I think that's one of the most forgotten and underrated of the whole year because obviously there's so many big ones, but to me, that one's up there.
Walk on the Ocean's one of the best songs in the 90s, period.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Then September 24th, Nirvana and Red Hot Chili Peppers both come out with those two big ones. And so Red Hot Chili Peppers didn't really get big to me till 92, but, came out in 91. Okay, here's one that nobody's going to have. So the same day that my brother brought home that REM CD and I listened to it, he also had another CD that I listened to. And I wonder, Pete, do you remember this? Because I asked you this question when we did this episode that long time ago. You look very confused.
No,
it was,
I'll remember
so
when you
back
say it,
then, New Age music was quite big. And Enya, I love
yes.
Enya. So this was her second one, though. Shepherd Moons came out on November 4th, and I already had Watermark, and now this came out, and I think those are great albums to listen to. And then here's a giant album that has not been mentioned once. November 18th, the last one of the year for me, Octoon Baby.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So that's to me, that's probably, along with REM, those to me are, well, I guess, no, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Red Hot Chili Peppers, whatever. But that's in there with me. That's as big as any of them to me. And I loved Joshua Tree. And that was one of those first CDs that I bought. But when this came out, it was like, who is this? This is not the same band. And it was so weird and so different, but it was like so awesome. And every time you listen to it, it got better and better.
I've been forbidden to talk about U2 in any public forum after the Playlist Wars U2 episode. So
I supported you on that. So
yeah, I'll just give a little tiny thing. You're picking your 10 favorite songs of U2. U2, I love as a band. They're not one of my favorites, though. And one of my favorite songs by them was their cover of Christmas, Baby Please Come Home from A Very Special Christmas. And I put that in my list and apparently offended every U2 fan ever when that episode went out.
Not me. I thought it was cool.
And it's been a running gag now. We're at episode 40 something. This was episode 5, and people still like, dude, really? The Christmas song, U2? Are you kidding me? How could you? I'm like, I love it. I love it. I'm sorry. So I didn't put Octoon Baby in there.
One of my favorite U2 songs is it's on the Honeymoon in Vegas soundtrack, and it's their cover of Fools Rush In.
Nice. Good one.
I love that CD. We used to listen to that all the time. I don't remember them having a song on it.
It's like, I think it might be the last song on the album.
Really?
And it's fantastic. Yes. Huh. It's completely different. Doesn't sound anything like the original. But the way they do it is fantastic.
Speaking of Dwight Yoakam, Suspicious Minds is on that, and that's great.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They're
all right. I'll throw it over to you, Giff, for your, what have we not said yet?
Well, I think every single album that I have on my list has been said, but let me just kind of touch base on a few notes that I had. So we did mention Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. I preferred 1. With songs like Don't Cry, Live and Let Die, and November Rain.
Live and Let Die is my favorite. I love that song.
Yeah, that is an excellent one.
Mine's Dust and Bones, which is not even a single, but I just love that. It's very Rolling Stonesy, so to speak.
Yep. 10, of course, debut album of Pearl Jam. I had Octoon Baby on my list.
Did you really?
I certainly did. November 18th, 91, 10 times platinum by the end of 92. The first album or first CD that my brother owned was the Metallica Black album. So that got a lot of play in the house as well. Blood, Sugar, Sex, and Magic. My memory of that was last day of school, sophomore year, driving around in Brad's car, and he had this single cassette.
I had the single cassette before I had them both. I think I had the album and the cassette for some reason.
Right. But we were listening to Under the Bridge over and over and over, driving around last day of school. So that's my...
I do want to point out that I remember that Brad had the cassette player in the car, but he had a CD player that came with like the you had to stick it into the cassette.
That's how you listen to your portable CD
player. That's how
player.
you did it back then.
You plugged it into the cassette player, and
and it would skip a lot anytime you hit a bump or something.
Except my dad built a little wooden shelf on the stick shift that you could set it on to help try to keep it
Stable.
Brad, you also mentioned Boys to Men. Do you remember our discussions about singing in the Pops concert? It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. I remember it was going to be you, me, Norgard, and one other, and I can't remember who the fourth was. Was it Bo?
I would guess Hummel, but I don't know.
Hummel?
I do remember that coming up. Not that I would ever sing in front of people, but I remember that being kicked around.
So yeah, but so many great songs on that CD, and I'm still upset at myself that I bought "Color Me Bad" instead. Then I'm gonna get into my country albums. "Don't Rock the Jukebox," Alan Jackson, May 14th. His second album, #1 hits of "Someday," Dallas, and "Love's Got a Hold on You." But my favorite song on that one was "Midnight in Montgomery," which was a tribute to Hank Williams. And also, Brad, George Jones had a cameo on the song "Playing Possum" on that CD.
Love George Jones.
And I know you're a big George Jones fan. "Brand New Man," debut album for Brooks and Dunn. 4 consecutive #1 hits.
Really?
With "Brand New Man," "Boot Scoot and Boogie," "Working on My Next Broken Heart." My favorite song, "Neon Moon," was the 4th #1. And then "Lost and Found" hit #6. And then my favorite album, my favorite artist, Garth Brooks, "Rope in the Wind." 3rd album came out September 2nd. That debuted #1 on both the Billboard 200 and the country charts. So that one. Oh, the other thing I remember from that album was, for the Pops concert, I was thinking about doing the River, so I bought the cassette tape with the instrumental but not the lyrics, so I could do that at the concert, but I ended up not picking that to do. But anyway, that's how much I loved the River.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Pete.
All right, I'll take us home. Everything that I've got on my list has been mentioned. I had obviously my album was the Nirvana Nevermind album. I would play that just nonstop, like you said, Colburn. It just, I would play it and let it start over again and just play it on a long car ride or wherever I was. Boys to Men. I had that. I had Metallica, the Black Album, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, REM Out of Time, Achtung Baby. I did have on my list, and Brad, you seem surprised that Gifford had it on his, but
you not, but Gifford, yes, I was surprised.
I'm a huge U2 guy. Love U2.
Don't think I ever knew that.
Oh.
The things you find out doing a podcast.
And my country album that I had in here, I'd already kind of talked about the Garth Brooks one, but I did have "Don't Rock the Jukebox" by Alan Jackson on here as well, which won Country Album of the Year. And Pearl Jam 10 and Spin Doctors and Tom Petty. That's what I had on my list. Everything's been mentioned, so there's nothing more to say.
Yes, it's a great list.
Nothing more to say. All right. Well,
all right.
Want to wrap her up, Pete?
Hey, Brian, are you familiar with the band Preacher Row? You should give them a listen if you have not. If you don't have them in your CD collection, you should definitely go out and buy them. You won't ever be able to find it, I'm sure.
Maybe we could get one and send it to you in the mail.
We can. We can
probably do that.
We're very close friends with the band, especially the drummer. And they are the band that we use to open and close our podcast. So we always give them a little plug at the end of every show.
Would absolutely love to hear it.
Let's just have you plug your podcast again too before we wrap it up.
Oh, right. Sure. Oh, you could find us at playlistwarspodcast.com. We are on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for Playlist Wars. For the most part, the music nerdery comes from me. Any TV, video game nerdery that also goes out on the channel usually comes from Gomez. We're available on iTunes and all of the other fine podcast providers, Good Pods, Spotify, Pandora, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Wherever you listen to Pop Culture Yearbook, you can also listen to playlist. Your playlist
That's
wars.
right.
We're always welcoming new people to join the discussion. Love having Brad on. If you guys want to come join for an episode, we'd love to have you guys on as well. Just want to talk music with people and have fun and kind of interact and just enjoy nerding out about music. That's what it is. So I had an absolute pleasure chatting with you guys tonight. It was an honor. I thank you guys so much for bringing me on. It was a ton of fun, guys. Really. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. And
we enjoyed it too.
Sticking with us here. You know, we got different time zones too, so it's a little later for you. So thanks for working with us and
say, Pete, before you hit the outro music, I just wanted to remind everybody that if they go on to our link tree, and you can go on to Buy Me a Beer, which takes you to Buy Me a Coffee website, and we'd love for you to go check that out. You can subscribe, you can just follow. One thing I would like to add as well is we've had a huge influx of downloads from Newport Beach, California in the last 5-6 days. So we would love for you to go on. If you're from Newport and you like the show and you're listening, please reach out to us, leave a comment on Apple Podcast reviews. Reach out to us one way or another. We'd love to hear from you, and thank you for listening.
Yes. All right, here you go. We'll put on a little Preacher Row here for you. Thanks for listening.
Right. Thanks again for joining, Brian.
Yes, thank
Brian.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start to me on my back. I turn it up to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do.